Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by viewers like you.
This week on New Mexico in Focus, competition for Congress. Hear from both candidates for Congressional District 3 as newly drawn district lines are making things more interesting.
We are those Republican families, and we want solutions. We don't want talk, and we don't want party fights.
That's the thing. I have a lot of experience. That is making a difference in Congress.
And the warning from our Secretary of State about election misinformation ahead of November 8th. New Mexico in Focus starts now. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Gene Grant. This week on the show, our series of candidate conversations shifts to Congress. All three of New Mexico's congressional districts changed earlier this year when the state legislature finalized the redistricting process. Now, District 1 has expanded south and east to include parts of Torrance, Lincoln, Chavez, DeBaca, and Guadalupe counties. We'll hear from District 1 incumbent Democrat Melanie Stansbury in the second half of our show. District 2 now reaches into Bernalillo and Valencia counties and includes a chunk of Albuquerque. The Republican Party is suing over the changes to that particular district. That's where Republican incumbent Yvette Herrell is caught in a close race with Democrat Gabe Vasquez. But despite that lawsuit, the current district lines will be used November 8th. And in District 3, the eastern part of the state is now in play, with Roosevelt County and parts of Lee, Chavez, and Eddy County all included. Now, early indications show all of these redrawn districts have made for more competitive races. New Mexico in Focus correspondent Gwyneth Dolan spoke with candidates in each of these districts over the last few weeks to find out their positions on key issues for New Mexicans. We start in District 3, where Democratic incumbent Teresa Leger Fernandez is taking on Republican challenger Alexis Martinez Johnson. Now, Ms. Leger Fernandez has been in office for the last 2 years after winning Senator Ben Ray Lujan's seat when he left the House of Representatives. As she tells our Gwyneth Dolan, she believes the experience she's gained in this last year alone has been invaluable.
Congresswoman Leger Fernandez, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Gwyneth, for having me here.
I want to ask you first, sort of a broad question. What are you most proud of accomplishing since you've been in Congress?
Thank you for that question. The reality is it has been an incredibly productive 22 months. They say that we have gotten more done in this congressional session than probably the New Deal. But what I'm most proud of, I can't choose one, but let me start. What I'm most proud of is, of course, the Hermit's Peak Fire Assistance Bill, because that was such a long shot. People didn't think we'd be able to get it done, but I knew that I was not going to stop until I could get compensation for all those families and businesses who had lost so much. And I knew I had to make it happen, and we did. $2.5 billion as just the first installment on what we need to recover to rise from the ashes. And you know what? This is what justice looks like. When the government messes up, when they destroy so many homes and livelihoods, they should say, yes, it's our responsibility to take responsibility and then to pay the damages. And that's what happened. And it doesn't happen very often, but we actually are delivering justice at the same time that we're delivering hope. I want to make sure that these communities know that hope is on the way, resources on the way. Because normally, in a normal disaster, if your house is tossed away by a storm in a hurricane or burnt down in a regular wildfire, all FEMA can do is pay you about $30,000. Well, that doesn't help you rebuild. But in this instance, it was a man-made disaster, and so that's why we were able to secure full compensation. And that, of course, is pretty fantastic. And of course, you know, I introduced the bill in the House and made sure every one of our colleagues knew of the disaster and knew what had happened so they could support me in getting it done. And I'm very thankful to Senator Ben Ray Lujan, who introduced it in the Senate, and both he and Senator Heinrich made sure they got it through the Senate. My job was getting it out of the House. You know, I got it out of the House 3 times. You know, we passed that bill 3 times. You know, but there's so much other work that we've done. You know, from making sure that we deliver water across my district. So from Navajo, where there are too many families without any running water, which is ridiculous and unacceptable, to the Eastern New Mexico Water Project, where there are a lot of straws dipped into that Ogallala aquifer, and it's drying up. And so we are bringing, hundreds of millions of dollars to water projects all across my district, not just those two very big ones. We're helping our sequoias. We're making sure that the water flows, because when the water flows, New Mexico grows.
Well, I want to talk about money flowing. Inflation keeps going up, making the cost of everyday items just higher and higher every time you buy them. What have you done to fight inflation?
It's not right when New Mexican families, hardworking New Mexican families, have to take groceries out of their cart, when greedy CEOs of the biggest corporations are putting record profits into their pockets. It's a big state. It costs a lot of money to fill up your tank to get from one place to another in our state, and it hurts. We also know that a lot of the inflation is caused by three key things: Putin's war and its impact on oil and gas prices, the supply chain problems brought about by the pandemic, and as I mentioned earlier, we have large corporations who might have had a slight rise in costs, maybe 8% costs, and I could name them for you, but then they are earning 200% profit. That is simply not right. So what have I done in Congress? I voted for the Inflation Reduction Act. And the Inflation Reduction Act is going to start bringing down the costs of health insurance premiums. We are locking in lower costs of health insurance premiums. That allows families to have more money, right? Because they're not paying as much for their health insurance. It is going to put a cap on prescription drug prices for seniors, and it's going to lower energy costs as well for families. And this summer, we passed out of the House a consumer price gouging bill, and importantly, about the supply chain problems. We need to make in the United States what we need here. And what I say is, let's make it in New Mexico. So we passed the CHIPS and Science Act. And the CHIPS and Science Act is going to address the supply chain issues with regards to chips and a lot of other products. It is talking about investing in manufacturing here. And I want it to invest in manufacturing in New Mexico, in my district, because we have what it takes, right? We have skilled workers that we can use. We are a transition economy. We have really wonderful universities and colleges, and we wrote that law. I made sure it had provisions that prioritize New Mexico, so that we actually use our labs, use our colleges and universities. And so I want there's 10 innovation hubs they're going to come out of that law. I want one of them to be in New Mexico, and we're working really hard to have that happen. So I want us to have an enchanted innovation hub here in New Mexico.
We do have a lot of talent here. The average home price in Santa Fe is right now more than $500,000. And that's high, right? So what specific steps have you taken to make housing more affordable for New Mexicans across the state?
Exactly. Well, before I got elected to Congress, I served for about 23 years with HomeWise, whose job it is, it's award-winning, its job it is to help New Mexicans get into affordable housing. And I was part of a group that came up with about $150 billion for affordable housing, for housing. Homelessness is also a problem. Rising rents is a problem. We do not have enough stock. We passed that out of the House. Unfortunately, the Senate stripped it out of the bill. But I'm not ending there. That's my $150 billion to-do list. But what I'm actually doing is we have increased appropriations for housing. I have 2 housing projects as part of my community-supported projects. One is workforce housing. Everywhere I go, in rural areas, we need workforce housing. So one is in Cuba, because we need to be able to have housing for health professionals who go up there. Another one is we are putting $750,000 into a pilot project right here in New Mexico so that we can provide families with down payment assistance. right? A mortgage credit doesn't help you. You don't need it on April 15th. You need it when you're closing your loan. And so we have $750,000. That's going to be a pilot project to use like a down payment voucher that you can use then. That will help people buy their homes when they need it. We also need to bring down, as I mentioned earlier, the price of goods to build a home. And we are working on that, as I said, to try to address the supply chain problems, and those prices have started to come down. We need them to come down more. But this is a focus because nowhere in my district, everywhere in my district, it's housing. But I actually bring a lot of expertise about housing to the job in Congress. That's the thing, I have a lot of experience that is making a difference in Congress because I can bring that experience and apply it to my work for my district in Congress.
Okay, change of topic, abortion. Why do you think we should not get in the way of access to abortions after 15 weeks?
I believe, as most New Mexicans do, that we need to trust women to make decisions about their health care, including their reproductive health care, and whether to secure an abortion or not. We need to trust women to make that decision with their family, with their faith, with their doctors, without governmental interference, because it's a very complex decision that involves multiple things, including, health issues that we cannot make it from afar. And as I said, I trust women to make that decision. It's a health decision.
You live in Santa Fe, which has more artists and people with PhDs than any other city of its size. Nearly half the city's economy is tied back to arts and culture. But after redistricting, the 3rd Congressional District now goes all the way down to the southeastern corner of the state, which makes its money in oil and gas and ranching, totally different industries, different culture. How would you persuade a Roswell Republican to vote for you?
I am a daughter of rural New Mexico. I understand rural issues very well. My district right now is a rural district. I am a champion of rural issues in Congress, and that's why I actually have a whole pamphlet of all the money and all the resources we are bringing to ranchers, to farmers, to acequias. There are some really good programs that I have championed that we are bringing to rural New Mexico. And as a daughter of rural New Mexico, I understand those issues. I was flipping burgers at my uncle's rodeo, and riding the mule, which is a very old-timey farm equipment. Like, I get these issues, and I've been working on these issues, not just for the last 2 years, but my entire career has been dedicated to building rural health clinics, to addressing issues in rural New Mexico. So those issues are the same as my present district.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for spending this time with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Gwyneth, and PBS for having me.
I was raised in one of those homes, in a home where my parents did not care for me in the sense of taking care daily for me. My grandparents took care of me. I was raised in a family that was in poverty. And how did someone like me, growing up on the south side of Roswell, come to achieve the situation now where I am seeking to represent the District 3? And that all comes down to people stepping up to the plate. And New Mexicans, we take care of our own. And so I'd like us to get back to that.
Don't go anywhere. You'll hear Gwyneth's conversation with District 3 challenger Alexis Martinez Johnson in just about 10 minutes. And you can watch our full candidate conversations online on our New Mexico in Focus YouTube page. Now, for now, let's bring in our line opinion panelists for the week to talk about the rise in election misinformation. We're happy to have attorney Sophie Martin back with us, along with Tom Garrity, president of the Garrity Group Public Relations. And we're thrilled to introduce a new panelist this week, reporter Leah Romero from the Las Cruces Sun News. Leah, thank you for being with us as well. Now, the state's top election officials are trying to combat a rise in misinformation ahead of Election Day. Secretary Maggie Toulouse-Oliver recently made voting machines available to the media to show how they work and the security involved with counting each and every vote. Now, Sophie, I just got to ask, was this a necessary move to ease people's concerns? Is it enough? I mean, how would you place what the Toulouse-Oliver folks are trying to get across up there?
I think it was a very savvy move. Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the challenges that her department and many of us have, when you're kind of confronted with people who have bought into disinformation about a particular topic, is that they may also not believe what the media has to say
Right.
about that topic. So, I don't think that it's the silver bullet that's gonna resolve the issue of concerns amongst members of our community about voting security and the voting machines. But at least I think that the journalists who were there can make more informed, can be more informed in terms of their reporting, and I think her office's hope is less likely to really highlight and give credence to people who say, there are these problems, it's going to get hacked into, this or that is going to happen. So I think it was necessary. It's worth noting, like, some people are not going to be swayed by that.
Leah, kind of taking Sophie's point out there a little bit further, Secretary Toulouse Oliver and Attorney General Hector Balderas released a voter information advisory. It outlines state and federal laws against election interference and voter intimidation. But we've learned top right-wing election deniers are training poll watchers. You're in an interesting situation where you're located, where there's been a lot of activity about trust and mistrust about voting machines. Any impact in your part of the world, part of the state, on voter turnout particularly?
So, not exactly.
Okay.
So in speaking with the county clerk for Doñana County recently, we're kind of on par with 2018 numbers. 2020 was sort of an out of the blue, it was a presidential election year. So numbers are going to naturally be higher. But for this year compared to similar 2018, we're kind of on par. About 13,000 or so early votes have been cast at this point. And in 2018, that number was almost 36,000 by the end of early voting. So we've still got some time. And, there's always that, we're coming off of a presidential election. We're going to see lower numbers. But at this point, officials are saying we're kind of par for the course.
Tom, Cleta Mitchell, the Republican lawyer who advised President Trump to challenge the 2020 election, said in a video interview with Steve Bannon, of all people, that she and others are training poll challengers in New Mexico by name in other parts of the country. I ask again, should we be concerned here? We don't know what their goal is, being a poll watcher, so to speak, but is this enough to be worried?
Well, I think we all need to be engaged and involved in the electoral process. People have forwarded me emails that went out looking for, poll challengers, poll watchers and stuff. And, I think that, the point that you brought up earlier, as far as, as far as building the event that the Secretary of State had to basically build awareness about the voting machines, it was a solid move. However, I think that a lot of the education focus right now is on the election deniers. How do you take the teeth out of their particular argument,
right,
instead of providing an overall education to the general population? Because the greatest issues, as Leah and Sophie have mentioned, that the voting systems are facing in New Mexico is understanding and trust. And a lot of the discussions from government officials are being focused on that trust element. And government officials just aren't a trusted element.
Right.
So what needs to happen is that you need to go back and create a similar based understanding and, of what is the electoral process? How does a voting machine work? And, the Secretary of State has definitely started that conversation, which is important. But the whole context of trying to reach the average New Mexico voter is very difficult, because the words and terms that are being used are those which are pretty foreign to people, even who follow different parts of the electoral process. What is a presiding poll judge? And then there are different phrases that are being used as well, like Voting System Certification Committee, Election Assistance Commission, Voluntary Voting System Guidelines. And these words all obviously tie back to different aspects of the electoral process as far as the way the voting machines, the voting process works. But those words tend to intimidate a lot of people in New Mexico from being engaged in the system because they don't understand what those words are.
I have to agree with you. That it did sort of strike me as this was rolling out. Who are you talking to here exactly? Talking to media people is one thing. Talking to the general public is another thing. That's for sure. Sophie, let me lead you to this point too. What about the election workers? I was really struck that Ms. Toulouse Oliver said her office will have a virtual situation room connecting law enforcement and other officials with local, state, and that seems like a really good idea. I'm curious your take on it.
Oh, I would agree. So, I went and cast my ballot earlier this week, and I'm always struck by the dedication of the poll workers, but also by the fact that they are quite vulnerable in those locations.
That's right.
I mean, there they are, they're sitting out there. It's important, and I want to highlight this, that while there will be this connection to the state police, you in most circumstances, when you show up at the polling location, there will be no one in a uniform there. Because there's concern as well that having a police presence there could intimidate some of the voters who are coming in to cast their ballots. But you go in and you look at who is there, and you think they really, in addition to supporting our right to vote, the poll workers, they do put themselves in a vulnerable position when emotions are so heightened, when we know that the likelihood of disruption, it seems higher this year than it may have been in past years. So I'm relieved that idea that, they're not calling it a war room, whatever they're calling it, but that idea of the integration of these different systems, the communications are going to happen. I hope that it isn't necessary, but I also hope that it's something that they continue in future elections.
Good point there.
Because we need to be protected as voters, the poll workers, the whole process needs to be safe for everyone involved.
Fair point there. Leah Romero, I'm interested about what happens after Election Day during the certification process. As you know, Otero County commissioners only just approved the 2020 election results after a court order. And there's, certainly there's a concern something similar could happen in Torrance County now. Are you concerned about another repeat of the situation that you had in down your way? Because that got ugly for a lot of people.
It did. I feel like that's always a concern. I mean, now, especially in recent years, that's always a concern. We've had some changes on county commission boards, and we've seen some people come in, come out. So who knows? It could be particularly down here in CD2, something that we see.
Yeah.
But it's something that, like I said, is becoming something that you just anticipate.
Yep, exactly right. Thanks to our Line Opinion panel. We'll meet right back here at the virtual roundtable in less than 15 minutes to talk about the troubling new standardized test scores for New Mexico students.
I genuinely believe that we need leadership that represents our communities, that's going to fight every day to bring resources home and tackle the biggest challenges and to defend our democracy and defend our basic rights. And I think that in this race, this year, this is the biggest election of our lifetimes, where literally the fate of our democracy and our rights is on the line.
The Republican challenger for Congressional District 3 is familiar with running for Congress. She took on Teresa Ledger Fernandez just 2 years ago. Ms. Martinez-Johnson was born and raised in New Mexico, spent years in Roswell, and graduated from Mayfield High School in Las Cruces. Since, she's worked as an environmental consultant for Exelon, one of the country's largest energy providers. Here's correspondent Gwyneth Dolan.
Alexis Martinez-Johnson, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
After redistricting, CD3 now pushes far down into the eastern part of the state, it's picking up pieces of Hobbs and Artesia, Roswell, where you're from. Looking at this district as a whole, what do residents in Roswell have in common with people in Santa Fe where you live now?
Well, thank you again for having me. And what we have in common is a love of New Mexico, a love of our families, hard work. We always like green chili, of course, but we want a good economy. We want to prosper. We want to live in a state where there's not that much crime, things of that nature. And going from Hobbs, going to Roswell, and up to the north, we hold those values to be the same.
Scientists tell us that fires are getting more erratic and stronger, in part because of climate change. Do you see climate change as an urgent problem here in New Mexico? Is that a problem for you?
The urgent problem I see that's needed is proper policy and management of those forests. So, for instance, a couple years ago, if you recall, we were not able to cut down trees in Las Vegas, in Mora. So what do we have now? Those were put in place so that we'd have habitat for the spotted owl, and that's good. As an environmental engineer, I'd be supportive of proper habitat, but there's a way to do it, and that's not being seen. And as an environmental engineer, I would have worked collaboratively with our federal, state, tribal, and local governments to make sure that we are all on board to not let this happen again. This has happened before in Los Alamos.
Let me take you back to climate change, though. What do you think we should do to address climate change?
I think what we should do is, for someone like myself, an environmental engineer, who I've spent my entire career making sure our water, soil, and air is clean, you need to have people that actually have the know-how. You do not want government officials and extreme left party politics in play, because then what we do is we get a situation where, like in New Mexico, we're going to be subject to brownouts because they're going to take out one of our coal generating stations in my district. And for what? So that we don't have electricity? I mean, we have to do this in a way where it makes common sense. And that's why I'm running, to bring common sense solutions to New Mexico and to really provide expertise in that area.
You recently tweeted about another big problem in New Mexico, fentanyl, saying it's time to secure our borders. Now, government data shows that more than 90% of the fentanyl seized at our borders is taken from U.S. citizens at legal border crossings. Are there other ways that you think we can fight back against this drug problem?
Well, we definitely need to have a more secure border. And what I mean by that is what's going on right now, what the vice president has said that the border is secure, that's a lie. So we have an administration that is not displaying any type of compassion, and you're letting cartels run this border. We had the largest FBI bust here in New Mexico of fentanyl. You send your children to college, and someone offers them an Adderall, someone offers them a Percocet, and it's laced with fentanyl, and they die. And so this is not really getting a good look. The precursors are coming from China. They're being taken into the United States, and the border is not being taken seriously. We need a bipartisan solution, and I'm the type of individual that is looking for that. I was raised by an immigrant from Mexico, and he was not kin to me, but he raised me and showed me what the American way is, as far as hard work and determination. And I want to make sure that everybody has opportunity in the United States.
According to the FBI, the majority of violent crime in New Mexico is committed by young men in their 20s, not on the street, but in the home. And we've long known that domestic violence victims are much more likely to be murdered by their family members if they have guns. Are there any types of gun restrictions that you think could help reduce violence against New Mexicans?
Well, I think we need to assess those root causes. You mentioned the young men and things of this nature. We need to get to people that are slipping through the cracks. And I would like to have a better economy here in New Mexico where there are jobs. I'd like to make sure that our children are funded fully so that if they are not getting the proper resources at home, that we can come to the table as a community and make sure that these kids come out ahead. I was raised in one of those homes, in a home where my parents did not care for me in the sense of taking care daily for me. My grandparents took care of me. I was raised in a family that was in poverty. And how did someone like me, growing up on the south side of Roswell, come to achieve the situation now where I am seeking to represent the District 3? And that all comes down to people stepping up to the plate. And New Mexicans, we take care of our own. And so I'd like us to get back to that, but I think that we need to make sure that current gun measures are in place that we already have. We already have situations where we're doing background checks. What I really want to see is in schools, we need to make sure that the social media and all of those alerts that are being put out of someone in trouble are taken seriously, and that we sit down as parents and as educators and say, if you hear something, if you know of someone in the schools or anyone else that is going to commit a crime, please let us know. So I think education is key, and I think that the current measures we have are good. I am a hunter, my husband is a hunter, I also have my firearm for self-defense, and I think that for law-abiding citizens, we shouldn't make it more difficult for law-abiding citizens.
Advocates for the homeless say that a lack of affordable housing is a major contributor to people living on the street. What do you think we need to do? What could you do in Congress to help alleviate the homelessness crisis in New Mexico?
A lot of that stems from, again, these root causes. You're talking about fentanyl, you're talking about substance abuse. In New Mexico, we have a huge issue with chemical dependence. And so I think that treatment centers are very much needed. It hasn't been taken seriously. Only during an election time do people discuss it or take it seriously. And I think that to really turn New Mexico around, we really need to make sure that we seek our professionals out in mental health and also the chemical dependency. These individuals are dependent upon a drug and they need medical assistance. So I'd say probably half of it would be medical assistance and the other half would be mental assistance in regard to any kind of disorders or anything of that nature, or trauma. And so funding for that, I would really like to see that, especially for our veterans that have a lot of issues coming back from some war-torn areas. And back to your homeless, there's some people that they will not go into affordable housing even if that is provided. And for those people, this is what I'm talking about. But quite frankly, we have to tie it in with some type of program where you are working for your keep, in a sense. Of course, we all know that we need to come to the table and work together for, our Medicare and Medicaid, our children and our elderly and our veterans. So for them, of course, as a community, we'll step up to the table. In Congress, I will do that. I would like to make sure our health care is where it needs to be, funding pre-existing conditions.
I want to ask you about health care. We've only got about 3 minutes left. New Mexico has relatively few restrictions on abortion, in stark contrast to some of our neighbors. In Congress now, there's a proposal to ban abortion nationwide at 15 weeks. Would you vote for that?
Well, quite simply, it has been relegated to the states. And I think we should start representing New Mexicans. What do New Mexicans want? That should be the first thing that you're asking as a person for U.S. Congress or any type of leader here in New Mexico. And quite frankly, when you're talking about ending the life all the way up to the point of 39 weeks, that's barbaric. I mean, you're talking Democrats, Republicans, and independents overwhelmingly do not support up to birth, elective, and they do not support all the way taxpayer funded, which the leaders in this state are doing.
Polls do show us that the majority of New Mexicans support access to abortion. So if you were elected and this came in front of you, would you vote for or against a nationwide ban at 15 weeks?
I would vote for what New Mexicans want. And what New Mexicans want is they want to be able to have their reproductive care taken to the personal level and with their doctor. So quite frankly, very simply, I support New Mexicans. I support them having a voice and a choice. And at that 15 week, I think that is a point where they can make that decision to carry on or do not. And so I support what New Mexicans want. New Mexicans don't want what's currently going on right now, which is up to the point of birth. And you're talking no emergency. You're talking to someone that has had twins born at 32 weeks, who's fought for their life for more than a month and a half at 32 weeks. Right now, today, you can call Southwest Women's Options. You can say, I have no emergency, the baby has no emergency. Can I walk in and end the life at 37 weeks? And they'll say, come on in. That's not what New Mexicans want.
Last question, we only have a minute. The nation has become more and more polarized over the years, but we like to think of ourselves as New Mexicans as being more reasonable. How would you develop working relationships with Democrats in Congress?
I already have. Actually, when we're talking about the forest fires that have been going on right now, people know that they can call me, and I'm not even a politician. I'm a wannabe politician, right? So I've had Democrats call me. They didn't vote for me, but guess what? Why would they call me? Because they knew that I would do the right thing. And quite frankly, we need a check and balance on representation, and I would be that check and balance to any president that we have now or in the future, and we need to stand up for New Mexico. So I've worked with Democrats in Santa Fe all the way to Roswell know that I represent New Mexican families, and I don't ask any child, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican, before I help them. And I think today, when we see the governor come out and say, those Republican attackers, you're talking about families. You're talking about my child sitting over there. We are those Republican families, and we want solutions. We don't want talk, and we don't want party fights. We want solutions for New Mexico, for better jobs, for an economy, for a safe environment, and to educate our children.
Thank you to Ms. Martinez-Johnson for that interview. You can watch our full candidate conversations online on the New Mexico in Focus YouTube page. Now, welcome back to our panelists for this week. We're going to dive right into the new standardized test scores that show New Mexico remains at the bottom of the country in several key areas. Now, compared to 2019, fourth grade reading proficiency dropped 3 points to 21%, and math proficiency fell 10 points to 19%. Those are startling numbers and keep us at 50th in the country in those areas. But given the impact of the pandemic, nearly every state in the union saw it fall off. Leah, how concerned should we be about this new data?
Well, for one, it was expected. So we have to keep that in mind. These kids specifically, they were highlighting, some reports were highlighting 4th and 8th graders. And when you think about that, those kids were in 1st grade and 5th grade at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's not surprising that these kids are lacking or falling behind. Also, New Mexico has been at or toward the bottom of, the education ladder for quite a while. And, at this point, it's disappointing, but it's also, well, there's New Mexico, and which is sad. We want to see much more improvement and, hopefully going forward with more investments. I know that there's been so many investments pre-K through college. At this point, I think we just have to sort of wait and see how that money gets into the system, is used, and then maybe we'll see some improvements in the coming years.
I appreciate you saying that. New Mexico Secretary of Education Kurt Steinhaus made a similar comment. A couple things New Mexico is doing right. It will show improvement. It's not going to happen in a week. It's going to take a couple of years. That's interesting that you buttressed that point there. Tom, at the state's largest district, which is Albuquerque Public Schools, stayed about the same. That's interesting. What does that say about students in more rural areas where perhaps remote learning was more difficult, if not impossible for a time?
Yeah, I think what we see with the Albuquerque Public Schools compared to the rest of the state, and even Santa Fe, Rio Rancho schools, Los Alamos schools, Las Cruces schools, is, the districts were already set up from a technological perspective, right? They were able to use technology to their advantage, whereas the rural districts perhaps were not as equipped. I don't have any firsthand experience with, how the different districts around the state are addressing technology, but I think that's probably one of the items, as far as Albuquerque being ahead of everybody else to just remain even, is because technology was already integrated into the education system. I think one of the things that this report really highlights, as is mentioned in several of the items that we've seen in preparing for this conversation today, is that the pandemic era, it really only reinforced New Mexico's deficiencies.
Right.
So I'm kind of eager to hear what is that path forward, other than do better, which we hope that everybody will. I'm kind of curious to know, how are we going to provide better support to the teachers and to the communities where they are? Because having a one size fits all, which is the criticism of some of the standardized testing, but having a one size fits all curriculum for students throughout the state, is good to an extent, but you really need to come up with localized solutions to help the teachers and the school communities to really address the areas where there are deficiencies.
Yeah, good point there, Sophie. Also brings into question students identified in the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit. Because across the board, those student groups lagged behind their national and statewide peers, probably more importantly. They also almost all had lower scores this year than in 2019, with a few exceptions. Is it fair to blame those shortcomings on the pandemic too, or is this, like Tom mentioned, just a continuation?
Well, it's compounded, right? And
Gotcha.
and it's worth noting, Gene, and I appreciate you bringing the Yazzie Martinez, the students affected or included in that lawsuit, into this conversation. That's a large portion of our school age kids in this state. That's not, I think sometimes that gets lost. That's what is it? Something like 70%. I don't know
Yes,
if
it
you remember
is.
off the top of your head.
70%,
Of kids in our schools. And so that's a huge group. And the issues that were identified in that lawsuit didn't just sort of get waved away with a magic wand. It's an ongoing process. Now, we talked at this table, I guess it's a table still, a little while ago about progress that the public education department has identified that they've made in furtherance of their compliance with the Yazzie Martinez, decision. But it's still a kid is not like replacing the battery in your car. It's not like you turn on a light switch. A kid and groups of kids take time to, even if you start right away, take time to improve their reading scores, to improve their math scores, to make other changes that will impact their learning. And it really does feel to me that we're very much at the beginning of that. Then layered on top of that, the pandemic and the inequities that we saw in access to educational resources because of the pandemic just makes that a much more difficult job. I know that we are all worried about all of those kids who are in school.
That's right.
And how we will catch them up, because it is very much our obligation, I think, as a community to do that.
That's right. Leah, speaking of the governor, the scores come out as the governor and public education department announced new investments to expand tutoring for math and reading and science. In that, the program would target K through 8th graders at priority schools. Just one of the pieces of the puzzle, certainly, but could it have a tangible impact, and how soon?
I mean, that's a tough one. Determining how soon, I'm not sure, but I do think that added sort of outside tutoring is definitely going to make a difference. But I think it's also going to depend on the kid.
Right.
It takes different kids at different levels, different amounts of time to grasp information, and I'm only 6 years removed from the New Mexico public education system. And, kids in my class were, there were kids behind, there were kids ahead. That's just how it goes. So I think it's really going to depend on the kid. But I think it's a step in the right direction.
Yep. Tom, we've had an educational funding item on the ballot, Constitutional Amendment 1. If passed, it would divert more money from the Land Grant Permanent Fund to be used in early childhood and public ed. Now, opponents say we need to keep saving that money, of course, before we take more out, but polls show it's likely to pass. The fundamental question here, is money the answer to pulling us out of this?
No, it is not. And that's not an endorsement or a non-endorsement for that particular issue. But the issues that are being faced by the New Mexico educational system are not purely financially based. And you can make that argument by looking at the current allotment of money that goes towards public education. It's a systemic issue that really needs to be fixed. Back during my very brief tenure with the Albuquerque Public Schools, there was, I quickly learned that the best sixth grade reading, the best third grade reading programs were actually in the sixth grade because, there was so much catch up that needed to take place. And so, we're seeing, probably now that it's fourth and eighth grade, I shudder to think that the best fourth grade reading programs are in the eighth grade. But, I think that there's just a systemic issue that needs to be addressed, and it's not at a statewide level, it's at a school district by district level.
That's a good point too. Sophie, can I get you to pick up on that same point that Tom just made? Is where do we go from here, basically, is the question.
Well, I mean, it's a question the entire country is asking at this point, right? With the results, you look around the country and everybody is reeling from this.
Yep.
I think that there are promising programs that are in place in New Mexico that need time. They probably also do need more funding. I mean, to Tom's point, you don't just throw money at it, but one of the things that's tough in our political environment is every however many years we have the potential for the current program to be scrapped, thrown away, and a new program put in its place. And kids can't afford to have that happen. They need the continuity, and we need the time to make sure that these programs are correctly and fully implemented, and then to determine whether or not they worked. So, I mean, I think one of the real challenges, this isn't me saying like, it has to be this person in office or that person in office forever, but it would certainly be helpful if our state could make a commitment as a whole to keeping the good programs going and to continuing to fund them appropriately.
That's a fair point. Absolutely. Hey, thanks again to our Line panel as always. Now, be sure to let us know what you think about any of the topics the Line covered on our Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram pages, and catch any episodes you may have missed on the PBS Video app and on your Roku or smart TV. Now, we end tonight with Gwyneth Dolan's interview with Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury. We also arranged an interview with Republican challenger Michelle Garcia Holmes, but she demanded to see our questions ahead of time. Now, as a policy, we do not disclose interview questions to candidates for public office during an election season. And we explained that to Ms. Garcia Holmes, and she ultimately refused the interview. For that reason, this interview with Representative Stansbury is our only candidate conversation from CD1. Here's Gwyneth.
Representative Melanie Stansbury, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
You've been in Congress just over a year and a half since Deb Haaland left to lead the Interior Department. What are you most proud of having accomplished so far?
Well, I think this has been one of the most productive Congresses ever in American history. We've passed the American Recovery Plan that cut childhood poverty by half across the country. We passed a bipartisan infrastructure law that will help invest in broadband, roads, and water. We passed a CHIPS Act that'll invest in innovation, one of the most important veterans bills ever in history since the GI Bill. But I think some of the things that I'm most proud of is the work that we've been doing for New Mexico. So I passed 3 water bills out of the House that will help to secure our water future for New Mexico. We just brought $2.5 billion home for families who are impacted by the fires up north. And I've been fighting to bring home community funding to tackle public safety, the fentanyl crisis, homelessness and housing insecurity, food insecurity issues, and of course, invest in our youth. So that's the work that really I think gives me the most meaning and gets me out of bed every morning.
What specifically have you done for New Mexicans on inflation, and what more will you do to help bring those prices down?
Well, New Mexicans are really, really struggling right now. And as somebody who grew up in a working class family right here in Albuquerque, I grew up in the North Valley and the West Side, and with a single mom who really struggled to make ends meet. I grew up digging trenches, working for our extended family's landscaping company and helping my mom with sewing. She had a small sewing business. And so I really know personally what it's like to try to, make it work when you're struggling economically. Right now we are recovering from the biggest disruption in our economy and workforce that we've seen probably since the Great Depression. And we recently passed in Congress the Inflation Reduction Act, which will help to lower costs for healthcare. For 30 years, our politicians talked about tackling drug prices, and we actually got it done in that bill. So that's going to help our seniors. It helped extend healthcare for thousands of New Mexicans. And the other bills that I was just talking about are going to lower costs for household energy, help our families here in New Mexico switch out their appliances. So we've passed a lot over the last year that helps specifically with household costs. But over the long term, New Mexico is a place where we're resilient, we're brilliant, we're creative. And I think the real question is, how do we build a more resilient economy for New Mexico? Even after the last economic downturn, it took years for our economy to recover. And so that's why investments in the supply chain, in small businesses, which are the backbone of our economy, in rural revitalization and that infrastructure are really critical, because we have to build a more sustainable economy for our people so that they can thrive.
You mentioned the fires, and climate change was a major focus of the Inflation Reduction Act. How do you see climate change as an urgent problem for New Mexico?
Well, I think obviously this year has made the climate crisis very apparent for all of us, from these catastrophic wildfires, which are the biggest fires that we've experienced in our state ever in history. Thousands of families displaced in the north and in the south. And of course, the really strange water patterns that have impacted everybody, from the Rio Grande drying in Albuquerque earlier this summer to the catastrophic floods that we've seen in these burn scars up north. And all of this is the signature of climate change. And as somebody who is a science professional and a water resources professional who's worked on these issues my entire career, I believe that climate change is urgent. The science is clear. It's already impacting our communities, and that's why we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. It includes not only the most significant investments in climate change in American history, but ever in the history of this planet by any nation. And so that bill is going to help us make those transformational investments in our clean energy economy, help our communities who are transitioning to clean energy, economic opportunities, create jobs, and of course invest in the resilience of our communities, from wildfire recovery to drought resilience.
You mentioned in the beginning problems with drugs and homelessness. Albuquerque in particular is feeling the burden of these interrelated issues of homelessness, drug abuse, mental health. The governor recently asked for help from the FBI. What specific things can you do in Washington to help Albuquerque deal with this?
Well, as a New Mexican, as somebody who grew up here in this community, these are personal issues for me. I also live in this community still, but also because crime and the behavioral health crisis have touched close to home for me. I personally lost one of my oldest friends to the fentanyl crisis about 3 years ago. And so this is not just a political issue or a public policy issue. This is a very deep and personal issue for me. As the Congresswoman for this district, my main priority has been to bring resources home to help support our state and local law enforcement and behavioral health programs to help address both the root causes and the immediate impacts of what's happening on the ground. So literally on my first day in office, when I got to Washington, D.C., I was able to secure $10 million for our community for a crisis intervention program that helps with violence intervention and prevention. We secured millions and millions of dollars over the last year to help with getting fentanyl off the streets, to help with emergency intervention programs. We're investing in our behavioral health system, especially in the Albuquerque metro area. So my focus has really been on those resources that we can bring home. But the other major thing that we've done is just a few weeks ago in the House, we passed a major public safety package, and it included several bills, including one that will help us provide retention and recruitment opportunities to increase our public safety individuals who are out there on the streets, and help provide better training so that, as our public safety officers are dealing with issues out on the streets, whether it is dealing with violent crime or a behavioral health crisis, we really have the resources and training to deal with that. So those are some of the concrete things that we've been doing. But, obviously, the entire country is facing a crisis with violent crime and behavioral health right now. And in New Mexico, it's particularly systemic and challenging because of these other issues that are interrelated. So that's why we've also been working with our behavioral health and homelessness organizations to try to address affordable housing issues and homelessness, food insecurity issues, improving our education system, and also providing youth opportunities across our communities.
Speaking of, law enforcement, public safety, we've had a record number of migrants at the Mexican border this year. What do you think we need to do to increase safety around the border and deal with the migrant issue in a way that is effective and compassionate?
We really need to pass bipartisan immigration reform. There's no question. Literally for decades, politicians in Washington have kicked the can down the road, have been fighting with each other over immigration reform, and that is what has contributed to this crisis. So we need to really reform our laws and our system so that we can build a more just and a more humanitarian system so that we can deal with not only the asylees who are currently coming to this country, but to provide a pathway to citizenship for the millions of people who are already living here, that we can protect individuals who are DACA, and that we can rebuild the infrastructure that can really deal with the caseload of individuals who are, seeking immigration status or asylum status here in our country.
You support stricter gun laws and access to abortion, but even with a Democratic president and Democratic control of Congress, you haven't managed to make progress on those. How will you do that if control of the Congress flips to Republicans, as the forecasters seem to think it will?
Well, make no mistake, abortion is on the ballot this November. There's no question whatsoever. And I want to be 100% clear, I am 100% pro-choice. New Mexico is very clear on where we are on this issue, and we have to codify Roe versus Wade after the disastrous Dobbs decision. So we need to pass the Women's Health Protection Act, which I am the co-sponsor of in the House of Representatives, and that we've already passed twice this year. So, the real issue is that while we have the majority in Congress and the House, we have a 50-50 split Senate. And you cannot pass meaningful legislation in the Senate without either breaking the filibuster or getting to 60 votes. And we have not been able to get 10 Republicans to vote on a bill that would protect abortion. So it's absolutely crucial that we hold the House this year and that we grow our majority in the Senate, or else literally we could lose all of our rights in this country.
You grew up in Albuquerque, as you said, but recently redrawn lines for this district stretch it all the way down to Lincoln County now, close to Roswell and Alamogordo. What is your pitch to Republican voters in these new parts of the district?
I'm so excited to be able to work with all of these different diverse communities. And our new district includes not only the Albuquerque metro area and Rio Rancho, it goes, as you said, all the way to Roswell, where my grandma lived when I was growing up, Lincoln County, it goes out to Santa Rosa, up the Anton Chico, just south of Las Vegas. So it's an incredible diversity of communities, including several tribal communities. And I genuinely believe that we need leadership that represents our communities, that's going to fight every day to bring resources home and tackle the biggest challenges and to defend our democracy and defend our basic rights. And I think that in this race, this year, this is the biggest election of our lifetimes, where literally the fate of our democracy and our rights is on the line.
New Mexico in Focus candidate conversations continue next week when we hear from Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and the challenger in the 2nd Congressional District, Democrat Gabe Vasquez. And don't forget to check out New Mexico in Focus, the podcast, for headlines and context you need at the beginning of each week. Thanks again for joining us and for staying informed and engaged. We'll see you again next week in Focus.
Funding for New Mexico in Focus provided by viewers like you.